before we begin our journey in creating websites, there's some big concepts that we have to address first. Throughout learning HTML and CSS, you are going to hear me say, we are going to use this for accessibility, or we're going to use this because it's best practice, SEO. So I wanted to go over those concepts with you so we have a nice general knowledge base for those. And that just helps you know why we do the things that we do. So what we're going to learn today is web standards / best practices, site performance, SEO, and accessibility. The first one being web standards / best practices. So you'll hear me say it is best practice to do it like this, or it is a web standard to do it like that. And I swear it's not a cop-out answer. There are standards and practices set in place by an organization called the World Wide Web Consortium, W3C for short, and they write the specifications for web technology. And they've done this to make sure that there's consistency across all browsers. The web was created in 1989, 1990, and browsers, as different browsers came about, websites had to be made differently for like each browser, and it was a headache. So they decided to, you know what, let's nip this in the bud. We're going to create a standard for everything so it's nice and consistent across all browsers. They also wanted to think about forward compatibility. We are on HTML version 5. So we've had 5 iterations of HTML. But now that it has been created with forward compatibility in mind, that allows a system to accept input intended for like a later version of itself. We're always going to be on HTML5. It's just going to be like continually updated because they've created it to be able to do that. So it's nice and easy, right? So web standards, best practices was created by the World Wide Web Consortium. It's a mouthful. I've linked their website here. So I reference this all the time when I need to make sure I'm adhering to the correct standards. And then they also created a very helpful tool that you should use, and that is W3Schools.com. This will help you tremendously on your way to learn how to create websites and how to learn to code. So we can look at HTML specifically, look at different HTML elements, what they mean. We can see examples. You can even try it yourself and it will open up a little code editor and then kind of mimicking what that code is doing in the browser. So I highly recommend W3Schools.com. It's amazing. I reference it all the time. Then we have the concept of site performance. It is critical that our web pages display as quickly as possible. Generally, if it takes 3 seconds, 1, 2, 3, and your page does not load, most people would have already clicked off. Now, I remember a time where web pages, I don't know, maybe my internet was horrible back then, I don't know, the early 2000s, but I remember when a page would load from top bottom like a little bit at a time, right? This could probably be because we didn't really have standards, people didn't really know about site performance, couldn't handle, the broadband couldn't handle it, but now we have gotten much more educated, knowledgeable about how to make our websites load as quickly as possible. And there's lots of things that you can add to your code, like a code minifier, which deletes all the spaces. So like the browser can read it like super fast. It doesn't have to like go over the spaces. There's things like lazy loaders where it will only load part of the website that the user is at. So it's not trying to load a whole page at one time, just parts of the page when the user needs it. And then probably the biggest offender of slow web pages are images. We need to make sure that our images are optimized for the web. and we'll go over that when we go more in depth into images. But there are image file formats that are bigger than others, so we have to figure out which format to use when. And then also we need to make sure that we are exporting images at the correct dimensions. So if we have an image that is 1,000 pixels by 1,000 pixels, but we only need it for 200 by 200, then we should crop it at 200 by 200 instead of trying to bring in a big image to fit into a little one, a little space, and then all of a sudden you have all that extra information that you just don't need. So once we get to images, you'll hear me harp on about site performance quite a bit. Then we have SEO as another big concept to know. SEO stands for search engine optimization. It's all about increasing the quantity and quality of website traffic to your site through non-paid organic search engine results, which I thought was quite interesting. So we need to make sure that basically our website shows up in the first page of a search engine result. I'm just going to say Google because that's, the most widely used search engine. But when I say Google, you can interpret that as Bing or whatever other search engine. But we want to make sure our website shows up on the first page of your Google search results, right? And it needs to be organic. Only 6.3% of people will click on paid advertisements in these searches. So have you ever searched something and you saw a little tag that said ad or sponsored? And did that keep you from clicking on that and just scrolling a little bit further down and then clicking on a non-sponsored website? So people like to feel like they are in control, that they aren't being influenced, right? That they are making their own decisions. So we need to make sure that we are there organically. We aren't paying for that spot because not many users are actually going to click on that spot. 6.3% seems so low to me. Maybe I'm just a sucker for Instagram ads. I don't know. But 6.3%. And then also the first page of results. We got to be on that first page. When was the last time you scrolled all the way down, past all the search results, and then clicked on page 2? I cannot remember the last time I went to page 2 on Google. So we gotta make sure we're on that first page. You could have the best website, the most informative website, the most beautiful website, but if it is not optimized to be able to be found by search engines, then there's no point at all. No one's gonna see it. So we're going to do a lot of stuff for SEO. And then lastly, accessibility. This is huge and it's very near and dear to my heart. It refers to the practice of building digital content and websites and applications that can be used by a wide range of people. There are over 56 million people in the United States with a disability. That is 1 in 4 people. 1 in 4 people have a disability, and that is over 1 billion people worldwide. So we need to make sure our websites are accessible to as many people as possible because everybody deserves to access the web, to get knowledge, entertainment, whatever they want with the web, right? So we need to start thinking about how people use our websites, how they navigate, how they move around, how they interpret information. So users will access web content in a plethora of different ways. We could use a keyboard and mouse. Maybe somebody only uses a keyboard and they have to be able to tab through a site by using the tab key. Maybe somebody uses voice commands. They actually tell their computer, go to, and then they say like a website URL, or they say go to the footer, and it'll take them to the footer of the page and they can find the information that they're trying to find. There's also screen readers that will read out your web page to them. There's also Braille printers, Braille output printers. So if they need to print something out and they read Braille, can be read that way. There's also magnifiers for people with a visual disability or vision disability. So being able to magnify text to make it easier to read. Joysticks for somebody that can't use a keyboard or mouse, maybe a foot pedal, maybe a mouth stick to be able to type on the keyboard. So there's a lot of different technologies, and it's so great that they have created all these, and it only continually improves. But we need to be thoughtful of how users are accessing our web content. I want to go a bit further into accessibility and talk about 4 broad categories of disability and how somebody might access the web. So the first one is vision impairment. This could be somebody who is maybe just nearsighted or farsighted. Maybe they just need the text to be a bit bigger, to be more legible. Maybe the font, they need to be able to change the font to a more simple font so it's easier to read. It could be somebody who is colorblind, has different type of color blindness. There's lots of different types. So they have to be able to understand your website without the use of the colors. An example of this is, have you ever filled out a form and then it did not submit and you did not get an error message? All you got was that one of the form fields was incorrect, and you knew it because of a little red outline on that form field. Now imagine you can't see the color red, and how difficult and frustrating that must be to find your mistake and correct it. Another category of disabilities is mobility impairment, so how we move and interact physically. It could be something like, I broke my wrist and now all of a sudden I cannot use a mouse and I only have the use of my keyboard. It could be something that has happened maybe since birth, like a congenital disability, or it could be something that just happened to somebody, like a stroke or an amputation, and now all of a sudden their whole life is different and they have to relearn a lot of stuff. So let's make it as easy as possible for them to relearn how to access our websites, right? They're already dealing with so much. So things like making sure your website can be tabbed through, making sure that it's easily navigatable by a foot pedal or a joystick, that the form fields and things are easy and big enough to type in and to select, things like that. We also have auditory impairment, so a hearing impairment. This can be, a slight impairment where someone might need just a hearing aid, or it could be total deafness. And now they have to rely on closed captionings for videos. Then we have cognitive impairment. So cognitive impairment is the process, or cognition is the process of acquiring knowledge through understanding, thought, your senses. So anything that would impair that. Oftentimes cognitive impairment is a symptom of another disability, so like dementia and Alzheimer's. Their ability to retain memories. So making sure our websites are not confusing. Try to be as simple as possible. Also leaving breadcrumbs. So have you ever visited a site and you see your breadcrumbs from where you were and how you ended up, and then now it's easier to get back to where you were? I see this a lot on shopping websites. I'll click into, clothing, and then accessories, and then bags. But then I still see accessories there, so I can go back to accessories and easily select shoes, something like that. Cognitive impairment, let's see. Another example is to make processes as simple as possible. If you had a really long form, it's best to break that up into easily digestible chunks. That's why a checkout process is usually just a login, and or give us your email and password kind of thing. And then it's, okay, what is your shipping and billing information? And then another window is, okay, what is your payment information? And then finally your purchase successful message, right? So it's breaking it down into easier to digest chunks. So yeah, I just want to make sure that as we build sites and as we learn how to build sites and how more and more people are learning, that we are all on the same page of making it the correct way for accessibility reasons. We need to make sure that the web is a place for everybody. Just imagine if all of a sudden you could not access the web, and how different your day is, how different your life is. I use my phone every single day to look something up, whether it's a recipe, whether it's the weather. Maybe my glasses broke. I wear glasses and contacts. Maybe my glasses broke, and now I have to find the number for my ophthalmologist and make an appointment. But I can't really see the text that well because my glasses broke. So I need to increase the size of the font. So there's a lot of things that we're going to do. Some of them include making sure the text on our websites is not too small. We do not want to go below 16 pixel size. So all the text on our sites is going to be above that. And we're actually going to use a responsive unit of measurement called REMS. And we'll go over that when we go over font size. We need to make sure our images are accessible. This is really, really important. On images on the web, there's something that you can add in the code that is called alternative text. So if someone cannot see that image for whatever reason, at least there is a description of that image. So you describe to the user what that image shows, what it's trying to convey, the meaning behind it. For whatever reason, they might not be able to see the image. It could just be because the image broke. Maybe you put in the wrong file pathway, but now at least everyone knows what it was supposed to say. It means also including things like closed captionings. So this is really important. The Worldwide Web Consortium has actually put out a web accessibility initiative and then published the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. That's a mouthful, right? The WCAG for short. So these guidelines actually grade sites and make sure that content is accessible to people with disabilities. And there's 3 levels of compliance. A is the minimal compliance. Then we have AA, which is acceptable, and that's what we aim to do. Acceptable is very good. And then we have AAA, which is optimal. And AAA could be kind of difficult to get to, but AA, it's not hard at all. There should be no excuse that we are not compliant. So minimal compliance includes things like not using color to convey meaning, making sure that the color contrast ratio is clear enough. Like, have you ever tried to read pale yellow text on a white background? It's so annoying and almost impossible. So we're going to look at how to view color contrast ratios. Another thing for minimal compliance, closed captioning is needed for all like pre-recorded content, all your videos on your site. Moving down to AA compliance, an example of that would be that if you have a live video feed, so like YouTube Live, Twitch, the user has to be able to have live generated captions. And this is so great to see. I was so excited when I saw one of the streamers that I watch use it. He also used a font that is accessible to people with dyslexia, and I'll show you that. It's pretty cool. And then AAA compliance, like I said, this is a little bit harder to get to. If you have video on your site, you actually have to have a sign language interpreter to meet AAA compliance. And I was wondering the reason behind this, because I didn't understand. I figured closed captionings are great and easy, I assume, to follow. Probably shouldn't assume that, right? But the way it was explained to me is that sign language is like somebody's first language. that has an auditory disability. So it totally makes sense. That's really cool. So we have to meet AA compliance. One, because it is the right thing to do, and also because of Section 508, which is an amendment to the Rehabilitation Act of 1973 that requires federal agencies and programs receiving federal funding to make their electronic information accessible to people with disabilities. They need to comply with AA WCAG level compliance. So we have to meet AA. One, it's because of the right thing to do, and also because of that's what we need to do. So, like I said, it is not that hard to get to. We can learn all about it, and we will. We'll go over the color contrast ratios, alt text for images, things like that. Now, if you want to, I do have a references at the end of the slides with some links so you can further expand your knowledge. And then I also have a link to a video here if you want to see some of like the assistive devices in use, which is really interesting. Then also I wanted to show you something called UserWay. Now this is a tool that you can add to a website. You don't have to. Like I said, we can meet AA compliance fairly easily, but this is just a tool out there that is great and can help a lot of people. You'll notice the accessibility symbol sometimes when you visit websites in the bottom corner, sort of like this guy that's T-posing. That's the symbol for accessibility. If you see that out there, I encourage you to click on it. It's actually here, but it's behind my camera. There we go. Can we see that? So it's this little guy, it's a little button that you can press, and it brings up this tool. And this can be applied to any website. And this tool has a lot of different features to help a lot of different people out. So you can change the contrast, right? So maybe you have trouble with certain colors. Maybe you needed to have light contrast, extra contrast. We have a screen reader here. Hyperlink text, or highlight text, sorry. So links, highlight links. So this will highlight all the links on a page, which is really important when you're trying to navigate. We have bigger text, so we can make it bigger. You can do some of these things in just the settings of the browser or your computer as well. So you can make it bigger text spacing, the spacing in between the actual letters. Pause animations. Have you ever visited a site and there was just like too much going on? Like stuff coming in from all sides, and as you scroll, stuff like comes up. That could be very overwhelming for quite a lot of people. So you can have them be able to pause those animations. We can hide images. And then this is the dyslexic friendly font that I was talking about that I saw in the closed captionings of a Twitch streamer. This font is really interesting. The bottom part of the letters is wider to help people to differentiate between the different letter forms. Then we have a cursor, so people can make their cursors bigger or highlight like a reading mask. I kind of do this by default by highlighting text anyway, a line to help people. Tooltips, page structure. So we'll see this when we get into HTML and why this is important. So they're using the correct HTML elements in the correct way. So now it sort of creates a table of contents. So someone can easily look at the page structure, maybe go to landmarks and say, okay, take me to the footer. And now they know exactly where the address is. And they don't have to go through, a whole bunch of other information to get to the information that they need. Very interesting. Line height increases the height in between lines of text, so allows for some breathing room. Text align, if somebody reads better from right to left, maybe they read better when it's all centered, justified, things like that. And then a dictionary to look things up. So yeah, if you ever see that little tooltip on any websites, please check it out, see how it changes things. It might be helpful to you or somebody that you know, and it helps to get ideas on how you can make your websites accessible to everybody.